Hey guys, Cam for 15, and I am back with another Zenless Zone Zero video for you guys. And we are here doing a Zenless Zone Zero tier making list, where I'm doing a tier list, as you can see, in terms of what is my favorite story, up into 2.2, what do I think is my favorite story out of all the stories that we have had in the Zenless Zone Zero game up to this point. Now, I will also do an agent story tier making list. This does not include agent stories. That will probably be its own separate video and things like that. And then I think I might just do like a tier list of my favorite agents in the game. And what I mean by that, it's not like play styles and everything, and the play of the agents and how useful they are in today's, like, I guess you can say meta, but it's just strictly just strictly how good they play. Essentially, what is it? Essentially, how good they play all season, or or not how good they play, how much I like them on a scale from 1 to 10. So yeah, but anyways, let's get into it. So yes, you can find this on tier list. It's called Zenless Zone Zero Favorite Main Story up to 2.2. If you want to essentially do your own tier list of the story, and you want to rank them in the comment section, go right ahead and rank them. So I got all the stories from 2.0 or 1.0 to 2.2. So here we go. Now I'm gonna go in order of them. So yes. Now the first order to do is the 1.0 storyline. Now I'm gonna split them up by the chapter. So this would be season 1, chapter 1, and that stuff, right? So we're gonna start off with the first part, and that's the Cunning Hair storyline. Where I'm going to put the Cunning Hairs story in terms of tier list, and also the tier list in terms of before anything, it's peak, which peak obviously means it's the best. It's one of the better stories. Then next up is great, which means like, hey, this was a great story, but it isn't like something groundbreaking in peak. Good is okay, it's passable, or actually no, it's not passable. It's just a good, solid story. And then all right is it was passable. It was passable, and then pass is like no, it wasn't good at all. Now, what I will say is I think we can all admit, as a Zenless Zone Zero community, I think we can say there's probably no stories in the main story. Well, in my opinion, right? I know there's some Zenless fans that think that some of the stories aren't good as anything, right? Or great. But I don't really think there is a bad chapter, to say the least, right? So let's get to it. All right. So let's start off with the Cunning Hair's main story. I'm gonna put that in the good tier. The reason why I put that in the good tier is there was really truly nothing great or peak about the Cunning Hair's main story. The thing about the Cunning Hair story was it was just an introduction to the Zenless Zone Zero world. It was an introduction to Bell and Wise as proxies, and what proxies are in the Zenless Zone Zero world and what they do. And then we also get introduced to basically kind of the three main poster kids, three main poster characters of the game in Nicole, Andy, and Billy. And the whole thing about getting introduced to them, about them doing an odd job to get the strong box that obviously contained Fairy. I thought that was pretty good within itself, and it was just a nice introduction to the characters. of this game, and a nice introduction to reoccurring characters that I believe we'll always see from time to time here, um, and everything. So yes. And then obviously as we get into the back half of their story, which involves Nekomata, it was cool how they tied in the first mission you do with the Cutting Hairs with the Red Fang gang, and you find out that Nakamata was a part of the Red Fang gang, and because of it, she wanted to get rid of the Cunning Hares and basically get them killed, to essentially get back at them for what they did, to one of the leaders of the Red Fang gang, who ended up turning into an ethereal in the Hollow in that very first mission of the game. And it led into a whole type of thing with Perlman, and the whole type of situation with the train and the zone the one damage zone area that they wanted to make, obviously for the company, which was strictly through the Exaltus, right? And they didn't care if it was at the cost of innocent people's lives in this safe zone. They were willing to do it, but until when Nekomata realized what she was doing was wrong, and she saw that the Cunning Hares were actually good people, she wasn't willing to betray them, and she knew what was going on with the Vision Corporation, right, was all bad and everything, that she did what she needed to do to help them. And again, it gets us started with the whole situation with the Exaltus and Sarah and things like that. But I'm going to say it was a good story, for the Cunning Hares. Again, it was a good introduction to the main story of Zenless Zone Zero. Nothing too crazy, nothing too bad. Very likable characters to get you started off to like this universe. So I'm going to put that in the good tier. And I don't know why my dog is barking like that. I don't know why my dog is barking. And let me see if I can find out why my dog is barking. So hold on just a bit, guys. Okay, back after my dog was barking unexpectedly, right? All right, so already talked about chapter 1, or season 1, chapter 1. Let's get to chapter 1, or let's get to season 1, chapter 2. And that contains obviously the Bellabog Industries characters of Coletta, Grace, Anton, and Ben. So what I will say is, this is a tough one. This is a tough one for me. I'll say this. I'm gonna put the Coletta story in the great column. I know I said in one of my playthrough parts that I really do love the Coletta story, but I feel like the Coletta story, or the Bellabog Industries story, it's on the level of it's on the level of between peak and great, but I'm gonna put it in great because there wasn't really anything crazily, like, I guess, peak about it, outside of maybe that final moment with Coletta, in reference to her using the prototype thing that her father made. And if these ads stop, I need these ads to stop popping up. Thank you. But this story was great. I very much enjoyed it. Again, honestly, if you ask me, out of all the stories that started the Zenless Zone Zero game off, those first 3 stories, this was probably my favorite. So kind of sorry if I spoiled a bit of the spoiled, I guess, where I ranked those original 3. But the whole thing about Bellabog Industries kind of being framed as this bad company and trying to put out the whole, bad publicity about it, and they basically go to help to you from the Cunning Hares, which again was a nice connecting factor about that, right? So I did like I did like the story, especially when you get more involved about the whole Core's Bellabog stuff with Kaleda and getting the backstory about that, of the fact like, no, he didn't steal this money from the company. He basically did that to hide from, realistically, the Exaltus were trying to go after him, right? After the prototype, and it ended up becoming crazy. And that final battle where it ended up in them going absolutely crazy. It was pretty cool. It was pretty cool, to say the least, right? And that final battle against the one ethereal, or the sacrifice, right? The one sacrifice ethereal that ended up fusing with the other machines of grace. That it was crazy, right? It was crazy. But that whole moment, that whole thing, the emotion of that story was just really good. I know I didn't explain it in crazy depth, but when I go back and rewatch cutscenes for that part, it always hits me, because I really do like the Bellabot characters, and it realistically kind of ended off their story, because there's really nothing else that needs to be told from them. Like, if we do go back to Bellabog and we see the characters interact with them again, I would honestly be fine. I know we had that one event with the Swabian Temple rebuilding. Anton kind of showed up and stuff like that. But yeah, I would not be mad if at maybe some point down the road we cut back to Bellabog and maybe have something to do with Bellabog. But again, Bellabog's not kind of in the more grand scheme of things when it comes to when it comes to the whole thing, when it comes to the main story. Like, they don't really play a massive role in the major, like, oh, yada yada yada, the Exaltus stuff, right? It was kind of their own issue that they were going through, and that they just needed to explain and just further the plot, just to get more characters that we understand and things like that. So yeah. Okay. Next story, which is the season 1 chapter 2 intermission story, where we get introduced to the public security characters. Obviously I couldn't get Qing Yi in here, but this is the Zhu Yuan Qing Yi main portion of the story, the intermission. And I didn't want to do this, right? I didn't want to do this. And I know I'm doing this because, and I know I hate doing this because Zhu Yuan is definitely peak, right? Definitely peak. I'm going to put season 1 chapter 2 intermission into all right. It's an all right storyline, right? It's just kind of like the side stories, right? We just we just got introduced to Zhu Yuan and Qing Yi, the 2 public security members that Bell and Wise get to know throughout the whole first season. And it's kind of just the whole thing of, like, they had their own issues going on in that story, especially with the fact that, they were trying to help, because they're new to New Eridu, because they were enlisted to go into this department, and they were really here to help, geez Louise, why am I freaking forgetting his name? I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. Hold on, I'm gonna have to look this guy's name up. Jeez Louise. Oh, Bringer. That's who it was. Bringer, right? They were there to just promote Bringer's, campaign to make sure he ends up becoming, like, basically the police chief, of New Eridu, or not the police chief, the mayor of New Eridu, right? And they were just kind of there, and they have their own, storyline, with how that kind of interact with some things there. At the same time, the proxy to basically stay vigilant to and stay aware of, like, okay, we can't reveal, our sources to the, who we truly are to these characters and everything. But yeah, I didn't want to do that to Zhu Yuan and Qing Yi, because I really do like their characters. Like, trust me, especially who does not like Zhu Yuan. Like, it was a nice introduction to these 2 characters that I do hope, down the road we see them here and there throughout the story. Especially the fact that obviously Bringer played a role in the Exaltist and everything. I think the pubsec group will play a factor in this because obviously they have to because of the Exalters and the fact that they're probably that they're like top ranked criminals. So you would think PubSec would definitely want to bring these guys in and arrest them and try them and stuff like that. So I do believe we'll see Ji Yuan and Qing Yi, come back here and there. I don't know if they'll ever return, as I don't think that we'll see them make an appearance in anything main story related for the season 2 stuff. But I could definitely see it to maybe we get a season 2 intermission before we go to season 3, and then we can maybe get something that ties them back into the story again. But we'll just have to see, right? We'll definitely have to see. But I didn't want to do that to my girls, but I had to put it in the all right tier because realistically it was a side story. It didn't really advance the plot too heavily. It only advanced the plot minutely, and things like that, right? So yeah. So the next storyline is the Victoria housekeeping storyline. And I'm going to put this storyline in, I'll put it in the great. I was thinking about putting it in the good tier above the cutting hair storyline, but I think I'll put it in the great tier behind the Bella Block story. I thought it was a great story mostly because it actually did move the plot along. Because one, they do bring back the Cunning Hare's character for the because the thing is they're doing the Vision Corporation trial, right? They're obviously doing that, and the whole Vision Corporation trial essentially ended up, coming to a head because the whole thing was Nicole and the Cunning Hares had to serve the trial because they were going for the people because the Vision Corporation was actually going to kill people regarding back to the first part or the first main story part of the game, right? So that's why they did what they needed to do. And in the meantime, they basically got this reading because they were looking for the other proxy hacker, Rain, but Rain was basically, her signal was emanating from essentially Ballet Twins, the Ballet Twins Hollow, right? And essentially you just had it to where you got introduced to Lycon, Rena, Ellen, and Corin, who made appearance. It kind of had a tease there in the first main story mission, right? So I will say this story was good. There was a lot of definitely great hype moments, especially that last cutscene where Lycon did his thing to help out with the blimp and stopping them and everything. And it kind of just set the groundwork to where the story was gonna essentially end up going for the future, right? I legitimately thought that's where it was going to go and everything. So yeah, it was definitely pretty freaking cool. Definitely pretty cool. Definitely enjoyed it. I loved all the characters. Mostly Lycon. Lycon's probably my favorite character of the bunch. I feel like the other characters didn't do much and stuff like that. But yeah, and then obviously you got that post-credit scene where you had Lycon and Rena looking over the process like, yeah, we probably should tell them and include them in what's going on, but we'll keep a close eye on them. So yeah. Okay. The next part I'm going to get into, which I believe, and thank you. I believe the next part is the 1.3 storyline. And that is in regards, I think it's 1.2. The 1.2 storyline, right? And that is the Caesar stuff. So one thing's first, they are not going to all right. I'm gonna move the as I also get this ad off my screen, I'm gonna move the geez Louise, the Sons of Calydon story, Caesar story, to peak. This story was peak, bro. because it was the first story. It won, albeit, the only thing this did and how it advanced the story was just strictly due to the Perlman influence, right? Being there, right? And the fact that the Proxies had to go to the Outer Ring through to a tip from the Sons of Caledon through Billy to basically go to the Outer Ring, meet the Sons of Caledon, and the Sons of Caledon were like, hey, we'll help you out with the Perlman stuff, but if you could help us out with our Tour de Inferno stuff and everything, that would be great. And I just really liked the storyline. And honest to goodness, the Sons of Caledon faction, I would say outside of maybe, I think my top three, my top 5 factions are Sons of Caledon, Spook Shack. Actually, no, let me do top 3. Sons of Caledon is in my top 3. And then I would say Spook Shack. And then I would say Cunning Hit. Actually, no. I might have to come back to that. Maybe that might have to be another tier list. Favorite factions, right? But anyways, Sons of Caledon's is one of my favorite factions in the game of Zenless, and I enjoyed the story. Like, their whole story of each of the characters were compelling, but it was mostly kind of like focused in on Lucy and Caesar, especially with Caesar wanting to be the overlord of the Outer Ring. And it ended up, getting to the point where it's like, okay, they were kind of set up to try to, not get involved, right? But essentially, through the help of the Proxies, they obviously had to help out the Sons of Caledon. And then obviously, you get one of the more crazy moments where you see Pompey essentially get turned into an ethereal. And that ends up becoming a boss, and then you get the fake Caesar death moment, that final cutscene where Caesar is willing to sacrifice herself to make sure that the lava pit was going through, right? It was crazy, right? It was crazy. But this story was great. It was definitely one of the best stories in all of Zenless Zone Zero, and the fact that these characters are really good, that's kind of the thing there. So nothing else to say about that. So the next thing I'm going to put up, I believe, is another mention, I think another thing of 1.2, and that is the Operation Undercover thing. It is a side main story, which is a part of the main story. So I'm going to rank this, I'm going to put this as, all right. I remember at this time in the game, it was cool that we were getting introduced to the Jane Doe character, especially the fact that everybody was simping for Jane Doe over how thick she was. But realistically, the story was fine for the most part. It's not really a pass thing. I guess you want to put it on like the tier of pass. You can if you want to put it in the pass tier of saying like, this chapter is nothing special. It really isn't. It's just another like chapter to move things along, and it's just really a side chapter. It actually really doesn't. You know what? Actually, I'm gonna change it up. Right? I'm gonna change it up. I want to put this in the pass. I'll put it in the pass. Actually, realistically, this was just a side story. It didn't play to the overall part of the main story, because there was nothing crazy about the main story. There was nothing crazy that helped enhance the main story. Like, nothing it did enhanced it in any way. This was strictly just a pubsec patch for strictly Jane Doe and Seth to understand what those characters were about. But realistically, like, the story is fine. Like, it isn't bad or atrocious. It's just fine. And you just kind of take the focus of Jane Doe, to say the least. So, that's the thing. And then on top of it, Belle and Wise are not even, if not focus in on the main story at all. Like, legitimately, like they're there for one cutscene, and that's just for Jane Doe when she goes into the video store just to get a video, right? And everything, and that's it, right? And then she goes back at the end of it just to get a subscription from the proxies, right? But other than then, like, she had no interaction or any help or reliance on the proxies to help them, in this situation. Mostly because she's a secret agent for PubSec and stuff like that. Plus, if the proxies knew, like, she worked for PubSec, like, they wouldn't be able to tell her anything, right? Because they would definitely get in trouble for being outed as props, right? So it's one of those storylines where if you go back and you're going through the main story, right, it's something where it's like you kind of wish you didn't have to do it, and it's kind of something you just have to get through it. Like shit, even though this story was focused on Jane Doe, or this is a PubSec thing, we never got the focus on Shingi and Ju Yuen's point of view. Like, we only got them showing up in the first half, the very first mission, and then the end of the story after they take down the boss, right, of this group organization. So there was really nothing special about that main story point. It didn't really address, it really didn't, you know, move the plot along. Like, they could have definitely moved the plot on. Going back in now, they could have maybe gave a hint about Bringer being in league with the Exaltis. But that's kind of the thing. They didn't really do that. So yeah. So the next story is the Yanagi focused storyline, which it was the hacking storyline. I'm gonna put this in the good section. I'm gonna put this in front of the cutting hair story. This story was good. Now, this is one of those side stories that didn't involve, obviously, Bell and Wise, the main characters. It focused strictly on our Section 6 characters, which we got it was a good introduction to the Section 6 characters, but mostly Yanagi, and showing, like, she isn't just, some good looks character. She's not only a badass, right? But it really shows, like, she's kind of the brains of the operation, right? We already know, like, Miyabi is like the brawn of, their group, but it's shown that Yanagi is the brains, and even though she's just the brains, it doesn't mean that she's not, a pushover. She is strong in her own right? I did like the fact that they tried out this new VR technology, and it was basically a way to get information, because we found out the hacker essentially was working alongside the Exaltis, right? Just to get record combat data on Miyabi and the other members of Section 6. And basically, because of it, they had to, force it out. But obviously, Yanagi went back in there and helped them out. It was pretty cool, to say the least. But really good patch. Really good story. And it actually set the stage for the 1.4 story. So I believe this was a part of 1.3 as well. This is the main thing of 1.3. So the next thing is the 1.4 storyline, and dog, what can I say? The 1.4 storyline, dude, peak. The 1.4 storyline, man. I remember, leading up to this patch, bro. Like, legitimately, the devs were hyping this up as, like, no, this is going to be our Avengers Endgame, level, like, main story. And sure as hell enough, it was their Avengers Endgame. Like, this was the story that, you had your little miniature stories leading up to this patch, right? 1.4, you can make the case, was the patch that if you weren't into Zenless Zone Zero yet, this is the patch, or this is the part of the main story that you are going to be invested into Zenless Zone Zero. It's kind of like how I say One Piece, when you go to the East Blue Saga, it's up until you get to Arlong Park, and once you finish Arlong Park and how you feel about how that went, that's going to determine if you're going to continue watching One Piece or just drop the series. That's how what Zenless Zone Zero 1.4 was to me, in my opinion. That's how good this patch was from beginning to end. With the fact that it was revealed that Bringer was working alongside the Exaltus the entire time. The Exaltus were helping out. Um, the Exaltus were helping out Bringer. Make sure he gets to his main status as mayor of New Eridu. Um, and then you add that on with Miyabi and the others basically saying like, "Oh no, we know you are the proxies in regards to Bell and Wise, and you're doing illegal stuff." And the fact that Bell and Wise helped out Section 6 and helped out Miyabi, and Miyabi basically owed her a debt. And they realized, like, okay, something's not right. There definitely is some sort of corruption going on and everything. And only to find out it all led to the Exalted stuff, Miyabi getting arrested, and the whole thing about Tailless, her weapon, and the fact that the Exalteds were trying to use that in their favor, right? And it only led to the final battle against Bringer being absolutely crazy, to the point like in this whole moment, you see all the agents from the first half of the story all find a way to play a role and get involved in the fight against Bringer. I will say, I wish, again, like I said in my playthrough, I wish they kind of handled it a little bit differently, where, you got to play, you kind of got like a Sonic Heroes type of moment, where you got to play as all the factions, right? And you have to go maybe against a wave of ethereals that Bringer is commanding, only to give Section 6 and Miyabi an opening to be able to take down Bringer and everything. It obviously led to Bringer being the very first sacrifice in the story. And stuff like that. It led to the Bringer fight being one of the first true peak fights in the game. I know Pompeii was another really peak fight as well, but you get my point, right? So you got that moment, and then you obviously got the moment of the fact of Miyabi, and then with the conclusion of that, story, to find out like, Bringer, knew about Carol Arna, and the fact is he tried to explode himself and kill them, but Bell and Wise, through to their contact lenses, they weren't, and they're like, "Oh, you're one of those people," and which is the Children of the Damned, right, from Helios Academy. And you get that moment where essentially they explain to Miyabi about like who they're from. They're from the old capital. They're from Helios Academy and everything. And Miyabi is like, look, everybody has their own way and everything. And the fact that they knew Carolina, and even though Miyabi went through a bunch of shit due to the old capital falling, right? It was pretty cool. Regardless, she still trusts them. So, yeah. And then this is also the part when most of the characters, including the Ju Yuen characters, she finds out that they're proxies and everything, and all these forces find out they're proxies, and they all come together to take down one common goal. So I thought that was really damn cool, and it was a really damn good moment. So that's what I will say. So that was pretty cool. Definitely peak. So 1.5. I'm gonna put 1.5. I'm gonna put that in the great tier. I do think the 1.5 storyline is a great story. Again, it is that of the side chapters like the Yanagi stuff and the Jane Doe storyline. It really didn't advance the main plot of the story of Zenless Zone Zero. Again, it was another one of those side stories that introduced a new character in Astra, Yao, and Evelyn. And they had their own story. And the whole thing about, Astra wanting to play the one song, right, of one of her idols, right, that she looked up to. And it led to a great conclusion to that against the dude's wife, right? Because she just felt envious about all that. And then obviously the connection between her and Evelyn, the fact that Evelyn was basically kind of set to kind of put a hit out on Astra Yao, but she ended up obviously seeing that Astra Yao is a very great person, and she ended up becoming friends, and she couldn't let that go. But in Astra didn't give a crap that if she worked with this organization, because she saw Astra as a friend. So that was pretty cool. The fight was the main fight was but the story I thought was great. I know maybe I'm putting it a little bit too high, and mostly it's probably because I simp for Astriel like crazy. But I do think it was a great story, and it's one of those stories that I don't mind replaying again because I do think it was a great story. So yeah. Next up is the 1.6 and 1.7 story. Whoa, 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 whoa. Hold on. Okay. 1.6, 1.7 story, I'm going to put in the great tier. I'm not going to put in the peak. It was, again, this was the epilogue stuff. And I'll say up to this point, this was probably the most main story heavily driven, type of thing that happened in the main Zenless Zone Zero story, because it obviously involves Hugo and Lycon's relationship from their past, the sacrifice, stuff that was going on with the sacrifices, and the sacrifice cores, and them trying to stop the Exaltus from trying to unleash basically sacrifices on New Eridu outside of the Hollow, and things like that. And I thought, the whole thing with Vivian and stuff like that was crazy. Especially the fact, like, in a weird way, like, they were making sacrifices, and her friend Dina ended up becoming a sacrifice, and an ethereal in a weird way. It was a crazy story. It was a lot to handle, and it was cool to see. And it obviously introduced us to the new organization, which I believe was Tops, right? And everything. And it goes to show, like, even Tops people are involved with the Exaltist. So yeah, that's kind of the thing there. It was a great storyline. I don't think it was peak by any means, but it definitely was a really great story. And then it also got us to start off to meeting Ishwen in the story to basically tease 2.0. So yeah, and then also at the same time, this was around the time when This was around the time when the proxies could actually go into the Hollow, and help out the characters, right? Due to the influence of the mayor and stuff like that, which I still believe the mayor is back. All right, so now we're into season 2, so we're gonna get 2.0. I'm gonna say 2.0. I'm gonna whoa, no, hold on. I'm going to put 2.0 in the good category. Now, I thought the 2.0 story was good. I will agree that by any means it was not great, nor was it peak, but the 2.0 story was clearly, and I said this in the videos that I made of this, because I remember at this time, there were fans that were like, bro, that was kind of a disappointing chapter. Like, people thought we were getting some crazy chapter. Like, we were getting like 1.4 in this chapter. And obviously we weren't going to get that because, well, guess what? We're getting introduced to brand new characters, and it's a brand new season. It's starting all over. It's the anniversary, I know. And people kind of set their expectations a little bit too high for this. And that's why some people, when you look at it 2.0, they feel like this is a lackluster main story patch, and everything. But there were great moments in this patch, especially regarding Ishwen and everything, right? But I strictly said, and I remember saying it's like 2.0 essentially set the stage for what we're going to continue to get in the season 2 story. It's just a little bit of a start, right? A little bit of a start when it comes to that, right? And again, for people who disagree and say that 2.0 is just an all right or category, maybe the past category, I think they're respectively wrong. 2.0 is a good story. It's not peak, it's definitely not great, but I think it's a solid good story that gives us the introduction to Ishwen, Jufufu, Yi Shiyuan, and Pan Yinhu, and everything, right? And gets us started into a new region of the game and stuff like that, right? So I thought it was a good story. They definitely did involve the Exaltus into this, especially the fact that they literally tried to put miasma Wi-Fi Peninsula, into the main city of Phalium Heights and everything. So yeah, but I got 2.0 as a good. So next up is 2.1. I'm gonna put 2.1 in the great. I'm gonna put 2.1 in the great, and for me, it's kind of on the barrier of peak and great at the same time. And this was definitely one of those underrated stories, main story points, where it's like, how is this gonna play into the role of the main story? How is this going to essentially be a good story? And I, because I think people lowered their expectations, they ended up it actually being good. I love obviously the characters of Spook Shack and Alice and Alice and Yuzuha. That their bond as a character shows, and their friendship really grew, and it was really great from the standpoint the characters made this patch great, and it's the character interactions with each other. Mostly the Alice and Yuzuha were great in the moments. Finding out that Yuzuha was an experiment this entire time, and that Alice's father played a role in saving her, but at the end of the day, he lost his life to save Yuzuha, right? And the fact that in a weird way, Yuzuha kind of owes Alice a huge debt for everything that her father did for her. And then obviously Alice wanting to go save Yuzuha, and bring her back, and show her like, no, you're my friend, and I'm not going to let you go. It was a great patch, man. It did slightly advance the plot line of the Exalted stuff. Obviously, it even showed how there was more corruption within Porcelumex. The fact that it basically, like, the higher up tier people, they worked alongside the Exaltus for some people of Porcelumex, which had an effect reeling from 2.0 and stuff like that. So yeah. And then last but not least, we got the most recent story, which is the 2.2 story. And I'm going to put the 2.2 story in fucking peak, bro. But it doesn't beat out 1.4 yet. I'm still waiting for a main story point, in my opinion, to beat out 1.4. But when I tell you 2.2 was damn close, it's crazy, man. This chapter had it all. We get reintroduced back into the Opal Squad members, right? And we obviously get morally introduced, and we get a focus around Magus and Orphe. And we get a lot of lore drops about those characters. The fact that Orphe is a clone, and Magus was basically an attachment after Magus' main body lost, its life and ended up becoming a weapons construct. It was crazy, man. Absolutely crazy. And then find out, like, they're there to stop the Exaltus from advancing, making any more moves in Wi-Fi Peninsula. And to find out, like, no, they were trying to make a crazy sacrifice and trying to basically bring miasma and turn people into sacrifices in the real world, or outside the hollow, was crazy, right? And then, geez Louise, probably one of the bigger plot twists, if not the biggest plot twist up until this point in the main story, was the Isolde plot twist. The fact of, you not only find out, like, the main head of chief of the defense force basically got her squad killed all those years ago, because she was very pissed off about that. She basically agreed to work with the Exaltist, right? And basically went against her code, so all she could get is revenge, right? And that plot was when you find out she not only was working with the Exaltist, but she was Makarov the entire time, right? Which means back in 2.0, we fought her as Makarov, and he escaped, and she escaped. That was a crazy revelation. And you go back to my live stream that I did of that, right? I was like, I hope that's not the case, but it really does feel like Isolde is a villain. And that whole plot twist there, right, was absolutely insane. And then also too, I love this. I thought this patch was peak because this is the most we gotten of Sarah in this patch since then, right? When we got a lot of Sarah in this patch. And then obviously the fight against Isolde at one as her sacrifice version was crazy. And then obviously her 1v1 fight with Magus and Orphe was crazy, where it led to the emotional scene where it looked like Orphe was dead, but she wasn't. She got shot by a demi-gun, but in order to do it and get rid of Isolde, Magus killed Isolde and everything, and it was crazy, man. That was peak, bro. That was peak. I was absolutely blown away from that main story chapter. Like 2.2 is definitely peak. It is one of the better stories in all of Zenless Zone Zero, and my goodness, it was really damn good. And also at the same time, it foreshadowed at the end with the Yi Shi Yuan and Sarah cutscene at the end of it of what's to come, and the fact that it looks like Yi Shi Yuan is going to end up becoming an antagonist down the road, probably in the final patch of in the season 2 main story. But yeah, those are my rankings of the main story up to this point. I'll probably come back and do another tier making list after probably the season 2 story is completely done as we get into season 3. So yeah, but anyways, I'm gonna go over, guys. If you guys like the video, leave a like, put in the comment section your thoughts, hit that subscribe button if you want to get more Zenless Zone Zero content and stuff like that. And also put in the comment section what is your thoughts on these main stories. Where do you rank them in terms of, you know, what I listed here and things like that, and stuff like that. But anyways, I'm gonna get over, guys. You guys have a great rest of your night, and stuff like that whenever you try on this video. So then, guys, peace.